corner of the internet that I think doesn't get enough attention. And there are so many talented sellers. Hi, Cobert. So let's talk a little bit about handmade stuff. This is one area that I can talk about maybe from a perspective that other sellers, just a little different perspective. And that is, I sell a lot of products. Mostly the stuff that I sell, like 80 or 90% of the stuff is not handmade. Now, some of it's going to be hand finished, and I have sold millions of dollars in furniture and home decor. And to some extent, all of that has some hand craftsmanship to it. However, that's not what this show is about. This is us talking about what do you come on Whatnot looking to find in the handmade category, because I know a lot of the sellers that I've spoken with have shared some different experiences with me. And I think that if any platform has the ability to support handmade, as well as upcycled, as well as hand finished, as well as customized, if any platform has that capability, it is Whatnot. Because with Whatnot, you do have that level of interconnectedness or interactivity with your seller that you just don't find anywhere else on the internet. And even there used to be these places called shopping malls. I don't know if anybody else is old enough to remember that. Okay, my past life though. I remember from my past life. And even the stores that would do like personalized products, a lot of them don't even exist anymore. And I just think, well, that's kind of interesting. So where are people finding these things? If you're not finding it yourself, like maybe thrift store shopping or by going to local artisan fairs, if you're going to go anywhere online, I can't imagine any place that would be better than Whatnot, because again, all of the layers of personalization and interactivity that you can have with your sellers, you can know exactly where your source materials come from. And sorry if I get distracted, I'm outside, I'm trying to enjoy this weather and share it with you. This is one of those days where it's just so gorgeous, and we really get to talk, and I get to learn more about what you like to shop for in the handmade space. Because as I mentioned before, a lot of the stuff that I sell might not necessarily be start to finish 100% handmade, but it might be hand finished or it might be handcrafted. And I really like to kind of hear some feedback. Does that fit that category? Whatnot has done a better job. I was actually really excited to catch the Whatnot Sellers product update show, because they were talking about how they're really trying to not only help us find the big category we're looking for when we come to shop on Whatnot, but they're also trying to get like even more narrow where they can give us more of a specific. So as an example, food and beverage or food and drink. If you're interested in baked goods, that is now, I think, a subcategory, but then there's a different subcategory of snacks. So they're trying to provide the user that easy guide on how to navigate exactly to the sellers and the shows that they're going to enjoy the most, because we want to make good use of your time. But I think exchanging information every once in a while can be the best use of our time. So I'm curious, what do you guys consider when you think about handmade? If you want to buy something handmade on Whatnot, what would it be? I'll throw examples around of things that I've found, some of which I've purchased, some of which I've even won as a giveaway. Jewelry, for example. A lot of handmade items fall in the handmade jewelry segment. A lot of crafts fall into handmade. Decor pieces will sometimes fit into that category quite nicely, like wreaths. Seasonal wreaths can be considered handmade. There are garments that have been upcycled. So taking apart and I see that comment. I'm gonna talk about that one right after this. So taking apart garments that have like maybe had like Afghan sleeves put on them and things like that. I thought that is really, really neat, especially if the original garment wasn't in perfect condition, if the Afghan maybe was kind of, showing some wear. Using two different pieces and creating something brand new as a creation, I thought was so incredible. Okay. Cobert, you have bought personalized keychains from DMAQ. Am I saying that properly? Because I think I've seen that, and I think DMAQ does laser or some kind of laser or wood burning process from what I'm remembering. But I see so many good shows that it's hard for me. Another thing that's different with handmade, and this is true in all categories, is sometimes you don't even see the person, but you see the product. Laser on wood, very cute. So yes, very, very, very cute, and actually very smart about doing it that way, because from what I remember on that show, and we can compare notes, is there was kind of a template or a standardized, just kind of a standardized blank, and then you kind of filled it in with your own graphic or design, from what I remember. And that can also be a real time saver and a real money saver for the customer if you're not getting too many different options, but you're allowing them, to really make it something unique and special, one of a kind for what they're looking for. So I do have a pretty good memory if I remember that show. It was a good show, right? And if you guys sell in the handmade category, you need to tell us what you're selling, because when I go on the Whatnot main screen, I'm just going to share with you what my browsing is like. It's going to show me the shows that I'm most likely to buy something from, no matter what the category is, kind of like my top picks. And then if I go searching, if I go like kind of on a little search and find expedition, I can sometimes navigate to different areas. And if it's an area that I don't frequently view or purchase in, it won't necessarily be quite as easy. And with these subcategories, they're really good if you know they're there. If you don't know that they're there, it's like, is anybody out there? Hello, 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 hello. Is anybody hearing the echo? And Covert, you said you sell craft supplies, but haven't branched out into selling your own items. Thinking about it, that was actually kind of where I was before I ever agreed to participate in the handmade market. And I'll tell you, when I started almost 2 years ago, the category that seemed to fit me the best was called other craft supplies, and it's still there. But when I go back and I look, a lot of the sellers that I started with, or I was selling, in raid trains with, about half of them I don't see as often, and I don't know if they're just doing other parts, like if they've moved into different categories or it's just a timing thing. But other craft supplies is one where I would say you would definitely have found quite a few people who would fall within the quote unquote handmade subcategory, but it's not really its own subcategory. Another thing I just want to mention is I don't work for Whatnot, so this is all just opinion that we're sharing here and some community conversation. With handmade stuff, that label can be helpful, but it can also be a detractor. And I don't know how people feel about it. Do you feel that it's a value add, or do you feel that it keeps people from wanting to buy it because they may not know about the quality? And I would really love to hear, I won't call out your names, but I'd really love to hear some answers about that. Do you think that the handmade, I'll just call it designation, that it helps or it doesn't help when it comes to selling products online? Because to some extent, everything is to some extent handmade. It might be 90% manufactured on a machine, but a lot of pieces do involve some level of hand finishing. Now, when I was selling, millions and millions of home decor and furniture items, we would sell porcelain vases that we would describe, because this is what the vendor, the manufacturer, told us to describe them as. We would call them hand-painted porcelain vases. However, the painting on the vases was really a decal that was just applied and brushed on before it went into the kiln and was fired. But all of the catalogs and all of the marketing material, they all said hand-painted. Now it says, Colbert says, people don't see value, the time and effort that goes into handmade is what you think. I'm gonna question, when you say that, is there a specific product type that would apply to more than others that like really stands out in your mind? Because I think in some areas, we're just used to fast fashion. And so we don't think of the value of anything other than the price tag that's hanging off the item. By the way, I just bought this shirt today. Does it look like it? That's how fast things get. Cross stitch. Yeah, cross stitch takes a while, right? But you know what? If I don't like it, if I get all no's, then I can just take it off and find another one. It's one of those things. But a hand tailored garment, literally a hand stitched, a hand tailored suit, whether women or men, that is a very valuable piece of clothing. That is something that's very hard to communicate that value unless you have a buyer who's really paying attention. As a buyer, you're the same. You don't have an unlimited income to buy really neat handmade items. Yeah. And the other thing is on different platforms, I don't think anybody's told me this in these same words. And since it's a different platform, I think I'm okay just kind of telling you the direct quote here because I don't want to embarrass anybody. But there's an artist who I will usually purchase from who does resin art, basically, but kind of sculptural things and some jewelry. But I bought candle holders and things of some of their resin art. And they've told me they don't even try to make a profit. They know they're losing money every time they sell something. The materials and the packaging materials and everything, they know they're going to lose money for every sale. But they want to share their art with the world. So they actually pay another platform. They pay a monthly fee on a different platform to have a subscription where they can just sell those items. And there are so many people who do appreciate, and that's who we need to find. Yeah. And you said you love discounts. You wish you could afford to lose time and money on every item. Well, I'm not an accountant, so I'm not going to tell you that you can afford to lose time and money on every item. But as a business owner, sometimes we just have to take a loss. Sometimes it's just not going to be a good year. Depends on what's going on out there. So talk to your accountant. But it's very sad news. But sometimes I've had conversations with business owners where I'm like, well, the bad news is you're not going to make money this year. You're going to actually take a loss. The good news is you're not going to pay any taxes. And I'm not an accountant. I'm keeping this so general. Would love to see Whatnot become the next Etsy, bigger and better. I am not that familiar with Etsy, but I know there are some key differences. If you want to highlight some of those, I think it's good just to keep in general information about what the platform differences are, but I'm not that familiar with it. I know all platforms have struggled with their... I have to watch my words. I know all platforms have had difficulty pricing their service where they're able to cover their operational costs as well as the sellers feeling that they're getting a good deal and the buyers feeling that they're not overcharged for, purchasing something online. It's a very delicate balance. So I think that maybe that's coming into that equation somehow. Supplementing your handmade items with supplies that others can buy to use is a good idea. Have you had success in that regard, Colbert? And specifically, are you talking about maybe doing kits or bulk supply boxes, or just selling item by item different pieces that you use for different projects? And I love discounts_com. Amazing access to the artists themselves. We were just talking about that and process that goes into the band making process. Yes. That is the key. That is 100% the key. Does Etsy do video? I know some of these questions sound so amateurish, but once you get hooked on Whatnot, it's like I can't turn my attention away. You've had success selling supplies, Colbert. But you haven't. Okay, you're right. You have not tried to sell handmade yet. You're in the other craft supply category mostly. Good. I like that category. I like the sellers. Provides better access to artists at farmers markets and makers market provide. Yeah, I love discounts_com. I think it's Etsy is like a handmade jungle or river. Okay. Ooh, that's interesting. There was a platform that had an issue with authentication that was like one of the sticking points on handmade goods. I don't know enough about that though to really get into it, but I've heard that it wasn't Whatnot. And yeah, before we had Whatnot, I've been to like artisan fairs, farmers markets, and I've sometimes chatted up different artists or whatever. The challenge is with that type of a scenario, you really do have to have enough traffic or enough people there, because the likelihood that a casual shopper is going to really connect with any one artist or one type of art, it's pretty small. But on the internet and with Whatnot and with the matching capability, kind of that like rope that's, like intertwined, that's a huge advantage. And it saves so much time, and there's no setup, putting up your tent, hauling out all your stuff, standing there for 2 hours, watching people walk by. On Whatnot, if you're on for 2 hours, you should definitely be finding some customers. And good. So Colbert, you agree with I love discounts. I do too. Etsy has been overrun by selling stuff from another source. Yep. And other similar places. And that's a danger with every online platform, is that, what are you really buying and why? So let's put aside the what for now, because I think we're all going to have different opinions on what we would go for, what we would look for if we were specifically seeking out handmade products. But the why, who is really benefiting from this? And I think if you can connect it with a community or a creator, it makes a big difference than if it's just about another place you can buy the same thing. And a lot of stuff does cycle through different platforms. I know that. I've seen it. It's just how it is. The beautiful thing about resale is it basically has no end point. Something can be bought and resold many, many, many times. But, there's always going to be a little bit of a quality loss and shipping costs added on each time that it kind of changes hands. But yeah, I would say that a lot of the stuff on Whatnot is pretty much first quality. I agree with that. Now, I will also tell you though, I've purchased as a test. I've purchased things from overseas intentionally just to see what would show up. I did get an actual oil canvas painted in Asia that was rolled up. I think it sold for something like $1. It was incredibly inexpensive. Just to see what would actually come, if it really, really would be a quote unquote oil painting. And it did actually arrive as an oil painting. The problem now is that I don't want to destroy that, but it would cost more than I think it's worth to actually have it professionally framed and put onto a stretcher as an actual canvas. So that's one of my own experiments. But I look at something like that and I'm like, how long did that take somebody to actually do? And why? It wasn't the final price. You think you can get good stuff. Actually, you've got stickers on here that they buy it from elsewhere, and you don't have to wait a month. So yeah, the shipping speed can really help with Whatnot. I know that everybody has their favorite carrier, but Whatnot generally gets really good service from the post office. Generally, I mean, as much as anybody can. And yeah, you like supporting other Whatnot sellers. And the other thing is, so let's talk about this handmade debate. There's a seller who I've done some co-hosting with, and has anybody ever tried to do like a co-hosted show where you're selling something, they're selling something, or at least presenting something to be sold? And Jessica, CJ, and I did that. And what happened was I ended up with this huge out of season summer shoe assortment. They were basically like sandals and slides and things. On their own, they would not be worth much. She does custom bedazzling. And so she can take a pair of shoes that, maybe it's like $5, $10, $20 to start, and she can make it worth $100, $200 with all of the design work that she puts into it. She does a craft club. And so every week she gets a group of crafters together and they pick a project. And I said, is there any way you could make a craft project around these shoes? I'll sell them for whatever people want to pay. Like, I don't care about the price. I do not need 100 pairs of, women's summer sandals. And she did. She made a project and she showed the craft club what it would look like when it was finished. And I sold out of those shoes. And I was like, thank you. Like, every one of those pairs of shoes is going to be different. It's all going to be based on the design that each of the crafters chose, whatever colors they said they preferred. She put together those craft kits for them, but she showed a sample of what one could look like. And it looked really gorgeous. And if you have not explored co-hosting, oh my gosh, try it out. Do you want to try it out now? Because the thing about it was, and this is one of those things where I realized that as a capability, Whatnot doesn't give us the capability to both sell out of our inventory in the same live stream, because you have to have a primary host. So it's a primary host and then it's a co-host. So the primary host is the one who's going to be responsible for all the sales and the orders and anything that comes up or goes wrong. That's how it is. The co-host is really, again, there to help the primary host so they can't directly sell out of their inventory. Now, Jessica can sell out of her Buy It Now. She can sell those kits out of her marketplace listings. And in fact, I think on one occasion, that's what we did. So I was selling the shoes and taking size requests. And then she was just saying, okay, so go to my Buy It Now or go to my marketplace and order this kit. And again, it's all being perfected or finalized for that customer's request. So that was really cool. So so what would I say the benefits are to the person who can't sell exposure? Now, I think you can make money doing it. She made, without giving away all the sales numbers, but if you watch a Whatnot show, you can see what's sold and you can look at somebody's Buy It Now and figure out the pricing. What I was charging about 1/10 the price of the shoes as what she was charging for their bedazzled finished supply kit, roughly. So yeah, she could make plenty of money selling the bedazzled kits, and I was just happy to get rid of the shoes. Now, in theory, we could have reversed it. It would have been a little more difficult though, because of the size requests. So that was kind of how we decided to do it. And that was something we talked about before we did it. Like, does it make sense for her to be the primary host? Because these are her customers she was basically bringing to me. Or does it make sense for me to be the primary host? And then she just, again, creates their own custom bedazzle kit. And some of the shoes, I didn't see any other than the ones that she finished. But some of the shoes, the way they were designing them, I'm sure they turned out gorgeous. Oh my gosh. And again, this is just something that you can't walk into a store and buy. So I guess you could try to, but I don't know what they're going to sell you. And even just in craft stores in general, we don't have too many choices now, do we? So even that has kind of disappeared from the whole landscape. So people who have knowledge about how to make crafts, what glues to use, what beads are going to stick, which are going to fall off, that is actually worth something. But this is why we're having this conversation about Handmade, because all of these details really make a big difference in the finished final product. And it's not something that we can put a price tag around. It's something that whatever the final product is, it's what somebody's willing to pay for it. I mean, that's kind of what it's worth. However, we know that the process of making it usually is a lot more involved than what the person, sees in the finished product. So it's one of those things. I love Handmade because, again, of the uniqueness. And with Whatnot, since we do have a pretty good authenticity rate, meaning if I'm selling you something, you're really getting it from me. It's really the thing I am holding in my hand. I'm not impersonating someone. But the wind's like, you need to stop telling all your secrets. But yeah, the authenticity rate, I think, with Whatnot is very high. So I think that that's a good thing. But it's really, it's limited by our imagination. Now, there is a category that I will throw out there. If anybody has explored woodworking, has anybody looked at woodworking? It's one of the newer categories, but not brand new. But the reason I really love woodworking is it has all of the different pieces or all the different parts that show Whatnot's highlights. So in other words, the ability to do the live video as something's being made and created. Custom wood burning does wood burning art. In fact, if we're on it for a few more minutes, we could raid into custom wood burning. I'd love to do that. But yes, building, also selecting the wood, also designing the piece, also showing comparisons with wood. Literally every piece of wood is its own unique piece. So the wood grain that pops on one piece of wood will be different from, a similar piece, and having an expert really explain that. There's a guy who I've not officially partnered or anything with, but Native Timber Studios, Zach, and he has done some really good demonstrations. He has actually explained how to describe each detail on a piece of wood grain and what makes one piece of wood more valuable or expensive than another piece of the same tree origin. He's also even done it where he's explained why he does or doesn't like to add color to some woods. So that's the kind of thing that you don't get to see. You don't actually get to see inside the artisan studio. You really... Hi, Kat. Good to see you. You're just at the right time to talk about what you like to shop for with Handmade on Whatnot. But yeah, we were talking about woodworking, and woodworking, there's so many things that you can show on video and you can really explain and describe, and then you can get that instant reaction from the customer, even if you don't see it in their face because we're not seeing the other side of the screen. But you can kind of tell if somebody hesitates when you say, okay, is this the piece of wood you had in mind, or is this the size you were thinking? You can see if they kind of hesitate and they say, that might be a little too small, or I was thinking that could be too large. You get that feedback from the customer, and that's huge. Whether or not you're going to make the finished piece, because Zach will even sell pieces of wood, but he still takes all of his knowledge in making the recommendation for which piece of wood is going to work best for that person's project, whether it's a jewelry box, a coffee table, a wall shelf. Cobert, you say you like watching craft with me shows. You learn a lot, but also it's chill and no pressure to buy. Which types of crafts? I'm going to tell you my bias, and that is sometimes they go a little too slow for me. And this is where, again, we have to think about the customer experience or the interactivity. And with Whatnot, what I've noticed is it's like you have to kind of do okay, this is what the project turned out to be, and here's how we did that. And you kind of have to do this reverse. So you do the reveal, and then you kind of go back through step by step by step. Where I've seen people fall off in terms of just looking at the show counts, it's when you don't show what the finished product is or really give them a good idea of what it's going to turn into, and you go through each step by step by step. So that at the end, yeah, you do have something amazing, but you started with 30 people and you ended with 3. And ideally it would be the opposite. You start with a smaller audience, and then people are like, oh, it's going to turn into that, and they get more excited as they see it coming closer together. You mostly do card making and scrapbooking photographs. So every layer is adding a layer of interest, really, because you truly add a dimension every time you add each layer. So yeah, that is a really good one. Junk journaling sometimes I also think is really good. You've done shows where you just figured out die cuts together and it was fun. What's the craziest craft anybody's seen made? Because I'll tell you mine, and I didn't do it. I will tell you the craziest craft I ever saw made was a pasta box that got turned into a junk journal, a spaghetti box that got turned into a junk journal. I was like, who does that? Who sees that? Who walks like in the grocery store and says, that would make a really good junk journal. Yeah. Oh gosh. It's like I almost hate throwing out suggestions because I know that when people really get involved with it, you get engrossed, and then it's like, oh, everything can be a junk journal now. Trying to think of what. Actually, that kind of happened to me with paper crafting because I would do a lot of gift wrapping, and so it kind of has its natural end point when the item is papered, wrapped, bows, ribbons, all of the above. It's done. But then as I was selling in the other craft supplies, people were using little scraps of paper to create things that I never imagined. And I was like, oh, well, that could be something itself. Wait a second. So I had to go through a couple of times and just try to purge out some of those scrap piles because it's like, I know I'm never going to have enough chance to like make all the stuff that I would want to make with it. And I hate to waste it if I've already identified it's something that can be useful. Not a lot of fabric crafters spoke up. And actually, another thing is a lot of artists didn't speak up either. And I think I have a theory there. I have a theory because I have asked this question to professional artists, and I've asked them, what do you define as art and what do you call craft? And a lot of them have kind of like paused on that answer. And I'm not trying to call anybody out or embarrass anybody. But I'll tell you the answer that I settled on. If anybody wants to know, what do you define as art and what do you define as craft? Let's see if anybody wants to volunteer first before I give you my personal opinion. But I do think there is a difference. And I'll gladly share what I think that is. Because, when people are shopping for art is like drawing or painting, okay, yes, I'm agreeing there. I'm absolutely agreeing there. But the way that I think of the division between art and craft, because it's basically the same skills, is art is something to be admired or looked at and appreciated, whereas a craft piece is something that's going to be usable. It's something you actually would touch and use. Whereas a lot of art, we tell people like, don't touch that. Like, and yeah, Kat, you're right. Art is the umbrella term, and then crafts would fall under it. Correct. Yeah, because art, again, all crafts require art. But it's really, how do you differentiate? Because, and the other reason I'm mentioning this on a kind of a conversation show about handmade pieces is that sometimes it's how we present the item, whether or not the customer really wants to consider buying it, right? So if it's an art piece and that's how we're showing it as an art piece, but we're not talking about any of the functionality or any of the usefulness that it could bring, they might not want to buy it if they're really thinking they want something more in the craft category, which is something that might be, very decorative or highly hand finessed, but usable. And so, yeah. Now, the other thing is, not all art is valuable art, okay? And I probably destroyed the most valuable piece. But there have been times where I've looked at painted canvas and I'm like, that is just not anything I'd ever want to see displayed, but I like the colors or I like the pattern or something about it. Or maybe it's already damaged. And I've actually cut a canvas. I've cut an art canvas and turned it into other things. So I've used it sometimes as like a fabric substitute. And that's just something that I've done. I know a lot of people would not be that bold. And some people wouldn't think anything of it. So I think it can go both ways. I think it's like, even if it was made to be art, it doesn't always have to stay art. It could be turned into something that's more of a craft if it can be given like a useful purpose. Like a canvas, like on top of a jewelry box, can be really gorgeous. And really, stunning compared to like just a vinyl or a leather material, That's kind of the JJ method, the junk journaling. Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, I've been given so many history lessons. Junk journaling apparently initiated as something called like smash booking, which was sort of like a scrapbooking gone wild or something. It's gone through its different iterations. Taking something and turning it and making it something else. And, with junk journaling, even though journaling or journal is there, I've seen varieties that really haven't been like a bound book either. Smash books, yes. Where it's more of an assortment of cards in a holder or something like that. All kinds of creative stuff. So, and what I've seen on Whatnot, I'm just going to tell you, in terms of pushing the creativity envelope, I don't see that elsewhere. I mean, even on YouTube, and I'm a big fan of YouTube. I just did a YouTube tutorial for sellers, telling everybody go on YouTube. But even on YouTube, I don't think their projects really get there as far as the high level of creativity or imagination that's required to create some of these things. A lot of the projects I've seen are kind of predictable. If you just lay out all the different pieces, you're like, okay, so you're going to take those and stack them together and make a lamp out of it. Like, I could kind of picture that. But like, you take those same pieces and you put it on Whatnot, and suddenly it's this whole other thing. Old scrapbooks didn't have pictures. They pasted in various paper items. You feel like it was the original junk journaling. And they were Colbert, yes. And they also were family history binders in a way. They, old scrapbooks would include people's, marriage certificate and things like that. Like highly personal, highly ancestral documents. And that was also because people didn't always have access to photos or easy ways to make duplicates of things. Have I seen Kristen Swain, junk journaling? She's amazing. Is she on Whatnot? Because it looks like she would be. And I can't say for sure I have or haven't. It doesn't ring a bell, but I will definitely, I'm going to screenshot, so I definitely go back and check her out. Yeah. And that's the other thing is a lot of the inside knowledge that the sellers in the handmade category bring to the audience, it is of significant value, but it's not something that we charge for. It's usually just offered freely because people ask a question or because it helps the show atmosphere, for example. I will check. Good. I love that she has the same name on YouTube. I always suggest if you can get that same name on different platforms, that's the best way to do it. I'm going to check her out on YouTube for sure. The artist who I will tell you I've worked with, just doing some co-hosted things, Tristina, Tristina, and she sells on Whatnot under Tristina's Attic, ATTIC, and now she considers herself in the art category. Okay, so not really the craft space, but she is amazing, and she has a multi-decade career as a successful working commercial artist. And so she has this encyclopedia knowledge of art, and the information that she just freely gives out, or even some of the art lessons, she'll do a Sunday lesson on some different type of how to make something, different type of art, but like totally different types of art. Just those lessons, those could be college courses by themselves. I mean, she really does like have this. Yes, thank you. Please put her in. Tristina, Tristina S, Attic, ATTIC. And you'll find her there on Whatnot. If you go to YouTube, you'll just find her under Tristina, Tristina. So it's like Christina, but it's Tristina with a T. So T for Tristina. And she's been selling on other platforms longer than Whatnot has existed. And that is another whole other aspect of her success that I think we can all learn from, because she basically started selling art through e-commerce before there were even platforms that really allowed it, like before it was really there to be done. And if you found her, you probably found her website, and her website goes back, and I'm telling you, she has done so many different styles, periods, just everything you could ever imagine, because that's who she is. She is a true artist, and she loves learning and sharing her knowledge. And I'm just like in awe of that, because again, she's not sponsored by Whatnot. Nobody's paying her to do those art shows. If she sells some art at the end or during the show, fantastic. But, you know, anybody else, if you hire an art consultant or even an art instructor, they're going to charge for that. They're going to charge at least a few $100s an hour. And the ones who are the most sought after, they're going to charge by the thousands of dollars. So, I mean, we get a lot of good value without really having to pay the market rate for it. And I think that's amazing, because it's just, I don't see it anywhere else. Now YouTube would be the exception, because she puts her shows on YouTube. So I'm gonna give YouTube credit there too, but elsewhere, no. They just don't give us that allowance. They don't give us that ability to share our knowledge with the world. And, you know, the last thing about the woodworking category is I had a really interesting conversation with Zach from Native Timber Studios. He makes custom furniture, but he makes really high-end custom furniture. So the client will actually be an interior designer who a customer has hired. And they just describe whatever piece they have in their imagination, and then the designer will, you know, say, can you make this? So just to give you an idea, this isn't like stuff you could buy at IKEA. But I've had some interesting conversations with him during his shows, because, you know, his background is making the furniture. My background would be selling the furniture. And I think we both have a little bit of an insight into when you really, really get into that true ultra custom, any you ask for, we'll find a way to make it happen. Like that's the level of skill that he has. And that again is just something you don't get to see, you don't get to do. When I was selling furniture at my all-time highs, but I can't say I'll never sell another piece of furniture, but we never let the customers or the designers even interface with the craftspeople, the craftsmen, you know, and some of them own their own furniture shops. They never got that you know, that access channel, because it just wasn't how the system was designed. And here, you know, you don't even have to hire an interior designer. You can still talk to the guy who's going to make the same quality of piece, which is really amazing. So I do want to raid Custom Wood Burning. Is Custom Wood Burning live yet? Because I really want to raid Custom Wood Burning. Custom Wood Burning is somebody who I think does a lot more than they take credit for, but they really have brought a lot of focus on the artisan market. And by bringing together so many different sellers in such a rich, diverse basket of specialties, I think it just highlights that Whatnot is its own unique selling platform that you can't replicate. It has to exist and kind of grow organically on its own. And a lot of it is kind of the serendipitous nature of making these community connections. And in fact, I've learned at least 2 other sellers who I'm going to start following and watching their shows. Now, when I go into stealth mode, I'm not trying to be sneaky, but depending on whose show it is, there have been times where it gets really distracting and people are saying hi and stuff. And I want the sellers to be able to do their thing because, you know, that's what they're there for. You know, they're there to make a living. They're there to sell their products, you know, and we're all just, I think we're all just very fortunate or lucky to be able to enjoy and share that experience with them. So I'm going to check on custom wood burning. Let's see if we can surprise custom wood burning with a raid. And if we can't, we'll talk for a minute or two more. But yeah, custom wood burning has had so many good, not just yet. Okay. So many good, I love the chat, Colbert, on Whatnot, because it makes it complete, and that's the thing that I have discovered. So coming over from YouTube, where I was making videos, what was I saying? I don't know if you misunderstood. I don't know. What was I saying? I was trying to wait to see if custom wood burning was coming on so I could rate in. But yeah, I definitely enjoy the chat. And the thing that's different about YouTube and Whatnot, because I came from YouTube before I did Whatnot, so I can't reverse it. I can't turn back time. And I will just tell you though that. Oh no, I'm saying when I'm in stealth mode, that's why I don't want to distract people. When I don't actually have it announced, stay home to shop is here. And I'm not a celebrity on Whatnot, but a lot of people say hi, and we get all the side conversations going and the inside jokes, and and that just happens when you hang out with a group of people who you're really comfortable with, right? So yeah, no, I'm not trying to hide out. I'm just telling you, disclaimer, if you see me in your show and I didn't announce that I was coming in, I'm not spying on you. I'm just trying not to interrupt things. But it's fun to see some of those names. In fact, if Cat J is still here, I think Cat J for the first year did not miss a single show I was ever on. And was just so encouraging. And you're still here, see? But yeah, so the difference that I noticed from YouTube to Whatnot though is, Whatnot, it really is that personalized show in a way, right? I'm not going to completely change everything, but I look through the audience and I kind of recognize people and I know what we'll enjoy, showing, sharing, selling together, all of the above. And on YouTube, it's just a big blank universe because I don't really know who my YouTube audience is. A few times people will comment, but not nearly as much as they will during the chats and Whatnot. And that is true for the videos where it's gotten hundreds or 1,000 plus views. There might be 2 or 3 comments, but on a typical Whatnot show, we see comments faster than we can read them sometimes because people really are enjoying it and they're having that shared experience. So it's just a different perspective. It's just, because I think you have to have both. I think YouTube is so important because it reaches the entire globe and that draws an international buying audience, right? And then Whatnot really drills in on that individual experience that there's no way I could ever provide with YouTube. So I know this, I hope it doesn't make any sense because it's just imagining these huge scales of vast difference. But yeah, YouTube is the entire universe, and then Whatnot's your local coffee shop, so to speak, where people hang out and they just kind of, enjoy each other's company. And it's just a different experience. But I hope that custom wood burning comes on because I want to rate into custom wood burning. I feel like I've gotten so many favors out of all of her organization, everything she does behind the scenes, all of the information that she keeps us updated with on the Handmade seller group list, that I feel like I don't give enough back, but I do want to. Let's see if we can find her now. Custom. I don't see anything. Did she reschedule her show? Because I don't want to lose you guys. Did custom wood burning reschedule? The only other person I could think would be Moody. Moody Virgo Arts has definitely helped behind the scenes. No, I don't see Moody. Okay, so don't see Moody, don't see custom. Interesting. Oh, she's on now? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Colbert. By the way, you have been amazing. I should definitely make you a mod, but we will chat even more in the future, I am sure. And let's go ahead and rate into custom wood. There we go. Thanks so much. And hello. Okay, so it is a gorgeous day out, and this is actually going to be more of a